Hello, welcome. Happy Thursday, happy Friday Eve. Woosah. It is another night of Ask Czarina Live. Welcome to the show. Let me turn you guys around. Hey, what's up, guys? What is going on? Hopefully you've had a great and a fantastic week. Welcome to Ask Czarina Live. This is my weekly show that I do every Thursday at 11 p.m. where we come and we just let our hair down and we kick it and talk about whatever, whether that's business, technology, family, relationships, whatever. That's what we do here. So it's a little bit about the show, a little bit about me. I am Janine Truitt. I am the Chief Innovations Officer for Talent Think Innovations, LLC, based in New York. And it is my business strategy firm where I focus on helping businesses connect the dots between technology, their people, and smart strategy. And amongst other things, I help them with things like digital marketing strategy, human resource strategy, tech advisory, and just overall looking at their business strategy so that they can actually grow and be sustainable. So that's a little bit about my business and enough about my business, but I like to share. If you are interested, you can certainly find out more about me and my business at www.talentthinkinnovations.com. So tonight we're talking about adulthood. Adulthood and adulting, this whole new verb, if you will, of, I don't want to adult and what that even means, because I keep hearing it over and over again. And in fact, I've followed suit. I've become a bit of a follower and use the word myself on days in which I don't necessarily feel like being what we call an adult, by definition, an adult. When I don't want to do the grown-up things that I have to do, I'm just like, whatever, I don't want to adult, right? So we're going to just explore it. I think it's interesting because I hear it a lot. So, it doesn't matter what day it is or what platform I go on. There's at least a few of my colleagues who are adamantly screaming at the top of their lungs that they just don't want to adult. They don't want to do anything grown up for the day. They just want to be. Like, if they could sit in a swing and swing away and suck on a lollipop or eat some Fun Dip, they would probably rather do that than deal with what they have to that day. And so I'm wondering if this is just like an overall phenomenon, like if all of us adults just feel this way at points, or if we're feeling it collectively more and more and more because of pressures. And there's a lot of different arguments around it, but we'll hop into it and we'll chat about it. I mean, at the crux of it, it's really not supposed to be like a really serious discussion. But then it is, because I think that there's some underlying things that may be happening from a generational perspective that is just kind of making people exhausted with this whole concept of being an adult or growing up. And maybe we need a new definition. Like, maybe that's the case. So anyway, we will explore that. But as usual, for those of you that tune into my show every week, you know that I try to drudge up some sort of articles to support what I'm talking about and also provide some basis and a foundation for what we discuss. So here they are. So this week's articles are, the first one's called Everyone's Obsessed with Adulting and I'm Tired of Pretending I Give a Fuck. So if you don't curse, I'm sorry, but that's the name. It's the title. I promise if you look it up as such, it will come up. I'm not just cursing for the sake of cursing, although I'm no stranger to a good curse word. So anyway, that article is at thoughtcatalog.com. And again, it's Everyone's Obsessed with Adulting and I'm Tired of Pretending I Give a Fuck. Can't get more blunt than that. The next one is, do we ever really grow up completely? and that is at postcrescent.com. And then the next one is called Are You Growing Up or Just Growing Older? Aha. And that is at lengstorf.com. I'll actually spell it for you. It's lengstorf.com. So let's just start off with a basic definition for like what adulting is, or what the definition is of adulting, and then we can kind of take it from there. So in terms of adulting, it is basically to do grown up things and hold responsibilities such as a 9-to-5 job, a mortgage, rent, and then it kind of goes on and on and on. So this I think it was Urban Dictionary. So for those of you that aren't even remotely onto Urban Dictionary, like, you need to have that in your back pocket. Here's why. There are like a number of times when things come up, there's like all these new words. I feel like in the past at least 10 years, there's just like about a good 10 to 20 new words added to the English language every year. And I'm probably being conservative. And quite frankly, I'm young enough to know what they are, but I'm old enough to not care about what they are. So I see a lot of things, but I don't always necessarily know what it means. So yeah, Urban Dictionary has been a savior. It has kept me in the realm of youthfulness to know what the new jargon is and what the kids or adolescents or whatever are saying. So yes, Urban Dictionary, keep it in your back pocket. So yes, adulting, it's to do grown-up things and hold responsibilities such as a 9-to-5, mortgage, rent, whatever, and it goes on and on and on. And so, I mean, quite frankly, it's not really much different from, I think, what we hold conceptually in our heads of adulthood. So I'm sure, like, if I were to look up the definition of adulthood, it's probably something that has to do with part biology, part like how cognitively ready you are to handle certain things. Like, I wouldn't be shocked at all if that's how it's defined. Yet this adulting really just summarizes what everybody feels about adulthood. So when you talk about feelings about adulthood, like, people don't feel like you're a legit adult, just society wise, until you're doing certain things. Like, adulthood has literally been defined in this way. So, you know, if you don't put your own key in your own door, whether that's renting or owning a house, you know, you're not considered grown. You know, if you haven't yet held a 9-to-5 job, if you haven't paid bills, you know, if you haven't had to deal with disputes and bill disputes and broken down cars and had to figure out how to do that, or scrape up money in a pinch, you know, there's like all these little things that kind of go along with being an adult, right? Like, this is just how we've defined it. Hey, Brian Moran. So, you know, the question is, and I think the question that many of these articles ask is, hey, babe, what are you doing on the scope? Hey, holla. Long time no speak, Brian. What's up? So yeah, I think there's like all these little things that hey, babe. Olympics. So as per usual, you're like doing double duty, watching me and watching the Olympics. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm just glad to say hi to you because I haven't spoken to you in forever. And the Mets. Oh my God. Triple duty. How do you do it? That's crazy. So yeah, there's like all these little things that basically we associate with adulthood. And what all of those articles that I shared with, the topic tonight is, what is this whole phenomena of being an adult, and what does it mean to be adulting And why do people feel like why do people seem like they're so overwhelmed with adulthood? That is exactly what we're exploring, Brian Moran. Why are people so exhausted with adulthood? What happens to people that they decide, I'm done? So, yeah, there's like all these little things. And I feel like that's the way I feel. So I often say on my Snapchat, and I usually say it, I preface it usually before I'm about to do something that's really childish, is that it does keep us young, is that I'm not fully grown yet. And so what I was saying before with a lot of these articles, I think part of what I've gotten from all three, the overall theme, is that maybe adulthood is overrated. Like I say that a lot. I say it to my husband a lot. He can actually verify that. Adulthood is kind of overrated, and maybe we don't even need a distinction or, to say that somebody's reached the point of adulthood. Like maybe we're all just growing up, like in a constant state of evolution and growing. And I think that's true. And even too, from like a physicality standpoint, when you're old enough to kind of realize the circle of life, and you watch like, your parents get older, and you watch your grandparents age and that kind of thing. It's a very interesting cycle to watch, what your childhood to be, and then watch people that you've seen kind of be young too, kind of grow into, the state of adulthood or the mindset of adulthood, and then completely revert back to what most people would call a child. I mean, if you watch most elderly people or older people, I mean, you literally go from like infant, grow up, and then like back to infant. I mean, they are essentially like children all over again, which is a very interesting thing to watch. But in any event, something about this adulthood thing is overrated. And I know that there's like a whole delegation of people that feel like this adulting phenomena, like this whole kind of jargon around adulting and hearing it from a lot of younger people, namely millennials and Gen Z, kind of gets people's panties in a bunch. Like I've legit watched older people kind of scoff at this whole thing of adulting, which is, to say that they don't want to adult really is just like these younger people and younger generations' way of getting out of having to be responsible adults and do what we've all had to do, which is to grow up. So by them just saying on any given day that they don't want to adult, or they don't want to do anything that has to do with being grown up, if you will, they're just buying more time for them to be childish and not have to be responsible. And that may be true in some regards, but I just think people just are under a lot of pressures. And I don't know if those pressures are more now than they were, say previous generations ago. But somehow I feel like it's just more in our face. So even if it was all relative in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s and onward, I think, it just feels different for people now. I think it feels more of like a burden. The average adult, what are they dealing with? They're dealing with bills. Maybe they're behind on bills. Maybe they've got student loans. Maybe, they've got a sick child, and their marriage is struggling. And, at the same token, they're trying to find a job. I mean, there's just all these things when you're a kid. Yes, everybody has a cross to bear. And I think when it becomes too much, you really reach, no, please, no, let me be clear that no one's spared. I know it all too well. And I think, when it becomes too much for us, and this much I know from psychology, it's kind of just an innate reaction to revert back to this very childlike state, because that childlike state is basically a comfort level for us. It's not comforting to be an adult, right? Because, everything that's comfortable is just not there any longer when you become an adult. You know, as a child, you just kind of live very freely. You don't worry about, you know, what people think or what they're going to say. You're so silly. I can't even. All the way to the womb. You know what? I can't even laugh at you because I think I've had those moments too. I mean, there are days, there have been days when there's been so much coming at me that I'm pretty certain I've thrown a tantrum. You know, like not the kid tantrum in the supermarket kicking feet and, you know, I want, but, you know, similar, very similar, because you want what you want. And I think that's a human condition thing. And when things don't go your way or go the way that you want them to, I mean, what is the adult way to react? You know, and I guess the adult way to react is to put things in perspective and realize that, you know, maybe this is how things are supposed to happen, and believe in, when I tell people to look at me, I mean, you're so silly. I can't deal with you. But I think that there's just something to this whole idea that, like, there's got to be a balance. Like, I don't think you can be all adult all the time. And actually, if you're trying to put on that facade and you're doing that a lot, I think it's got to be bad for your health, or it's got to be bad for your well-being, or something in that realm. Like, I feel like there's some aspect of child's play that has to be part of your every day, or, you know, every week, or however you want to place it, routine. Because to Brian Moran's point, it keeps you young. It keeps you young. It keeps you youthful. It allows you to not take life so seriously, because I think life can get really serious really quickly. And for some of us, it got serious real quick. So like, how do you diffuse that? And so, you know, it's interesting because most of us, when we're young, the only thing you can think of and the only thing you ever wanted to do was to grow up. You know, like the second your mom put you on punishment for like the 10th time, or your parent, you know, your father told you couldn't do something that you really wanted to do, and you just got pissed off and was like, you know what? I can't wait till I get older. Because when I get older, I'm going to do things my way. Like, I definitely know I had that internal dialogue. I could not verbalize it because my parents would have slapped my mouth off. But there were definitely instances in which I felt like, oh my God, I can't wait. And now there's some days that I'm like, I think I'd actually go back to the days when my only concern was what color I was putting on my nails and like buying candy from the circus man. Like, that was fun. And I say this very tongue in cheek. I mean, I love my life. I would not go back to being a child now if somebody begged me to. I mean, I think there's a very different way that kids are growing up now that really just doesn't resonate for me, even as a young person. So I'm not super duper old, but I'm old enough to know a certain standard of growing up that doesn't, to me, in my head, exist anymore. And so, you know, what I'm saying is, it's true in the very tongue in cheek, in the sense that, you know, there are days where life just gets so tough, or there's so many tough decisions on the table and nobody to do it for you, because you are the adult and you've got to handle your business, that you've got to deal with it. And I think on those days, I think we all just kind of throw our hands up, throw our white flag up and say, you know, I'm out. I can't do it. You know, I don't want to adult today. I don't want to be a grown up. I don't want to have to make these decisions. They're hard. And, you know, for some, that's going into a catatonic state. And for others, it's, you know, binging on junk food, or whatever your mechanism is for getting past those moments. But I think those moments happen because we aren't really adults. Like, none of us are really adults. And I think another thing that kind of resonated with me with a few of these articles is um, this whole understanding that we're all trying to figure this stuff out, like literally on the fly. So it's, as much as you have all these people who may seem to look like they have it all together, like there's always all this talk about social media and how, everybody only shares the highlights, and everybody looks so smart and so pretty and so well put together, and the Pinterest moms with the playrooms that are perfectly coiffed, and their kids are perfect, and they're like on multiplication at 3, like there's just such this facade of perfection that exists. And we're all living in it. We're all living in it, and we're all contributing to it in some regard. But yet, none of us have any of this figured out. And when I say any of this, I mean like life. We're learning as we go, and we're making mistakes. We're like failing up and growing up, year after year after year, and trying to kind of figure out the whole meaning of our purposes, why we're here, what we're supposed to do with our lives. It just is. And I mean, that's down to, the most inspirational people that you can find on any platform. I mean, even they have their own crosses to bear, and things that they're struggling with, and things they're trying to figure out for themselves. So, this whole idea of, okay, you're a child, and then at this point, because you've achieved all these things, oh, now you're an adult, it's kind of bogus. The more that I think about it, it's kind of bogus. It doesn't really lend itself to the true narrative of how everybody is navigating life. Like it really just isn't. And when people start to have these realizations about the meaning of life, if you ever get there, right? Because most of us can spend our whole lives trying to figure out like what that purpose was, and then you die. And not to be morbid, but like, some of us just never quite get there. It's just one of those things. So I think there's something to this whole thing that maybe adulthood is just bogus and it doesn't really exist, and we're all fooling ourselves that we're these grown people with responsibilities, that have it all figured out, and are somehow in a regard smarter than children. So that that also comes along with the territory. It's like, okay, well, because I became an adult, well, clearly I'm smarter than my children or any other child, and there's nothing to learn then. And I think that's a wrong way of thinking too. I mean, certainly as a child, I learned from my parents and people that were older than me, but I would tend to feel, and I think they would also agree, that over the years they've learned just as much from me, if not more. And I certainly don't exceed age and or wisdom where they're concerned. So I think the age and that adulthood stuff is all very relative. And then when we start to attach this whole concept of, okay, well, I'm an adult because I have these things, then we get into even more trouble, I think, with this definition of adult, which is to say that, like, because you're only an adult if you have a mortgage, if you have rent, if you have like bills, you're an adult. But there's no other way on the face of this earth that you could be an adult without having 9 to 5 job, mortgage, rent, bills, problems. It's a troublesome definition. Like, if you want to define it that way, it's almost like, is there nothing else that we can attribute to being an adult other than woes, basically? I mean, certainly having a mortgage is great. So a few shows ago we talked about that, home ownership and the American dream and whether it still exists. And it's a beautiful thing for the right person in the right situation, etc., as I shared on that show. But if not, it can be a huge burden to the wrong person who doesn't need to be in that situation, who it's not suited for. So, and I think that's where we've kind of continued to get ourselves and other generations in trouble is by feeding these really like myopic, one track definitions of life and the meaning of life and adulthood to younger generations, and having them have to adopt that emphatically as this is how it is, this is how you do it, you either do it this way or you're doing it wrong. And maybe, my generation and even younger generations were sold, a bag of tricks, like not the funny kind, haha, like a bag of tricks that, like almost like those fake cigarettes. Did you guys ever play with those back in the day? Like fake cigarettes and you smoke them and then it like blows up in your face. Yeah, that kind of bag of tricks. Like not funny, haha, but kind of like takes you by surprise and you weren't ready. So, like maybe adulthood, like with that one article, that I spoke about that was from Thought Catalog. I mean, the woman that writes that article, she, thank you for joining NBC Incorporated. She basically, is saying, I'm done with this whole thing of adulthood and adulting. Here's my definition of adulthood. I I had a boyfriend. I had a 9 to 5 job. I had an apartment. All these three things that people say you must have in order to be an adult. And what she says is like years into having all three things, she realized she was completely miserable. And so within like a month's time, she basically unloaded it all. She broke up with her boyfriend. She got rid of her apartment. She quit her 9 to 5 job and she took whatever, money she had and she set out to just start traveling. And so, now she just travels and she has, on and off, she falls in and out of love, as she says, she's in multiple relationships all the time and meeting new people all the time. And she said, sometimes she is like in a state of like melancholy because she doesn't have enough money for certain things or she is broke. But then she says to herself, you know what? I have a job I love. I'm traveling the world, which most people don't get to do. And I love that. And I'm living the life that I want to live. And she's like, in my opinion, I'm an adult. I make my own decisions. Nobody is funding my decisions, but I've just taken a different road. And so she's basically like, who's to say that being an adult has to equate to this one ideal, that it has to be this way and it can't be another way. And I think she's right. I mean, she's chosen not to have kids yet. She's chosen not to do the marriage thing. She's chosen not to own anything so that she can be free to move about as she wants. And yeah, she may not have a lot of money. Yes, her bank account may look like crap. It's probably in the negative on most days, but she's happy with her life. And maybe that's all that matters. Like, her life is nothing like mine, and yet I'm not mad at her for that lifestyle. Like, if you're happy and that's what makes you happy and that's your adult life, your version of adult life, then by all means live that, be happy, die happy, etc., etc. So I just think that we've got to like expand the definition, and I think we can't be so quick to get angry or get all, nose in the air when you hear younger people talk about not wanting to adult. They're just very different realities for them than there were for previous generations. And you can argue whether they're being babies about it or if they're not made of the tough stuff that they can't deal with life. And, hey, that may be true. But I think the one thing we have to at least admit to and give them credit for is that they're no longer living life for anybody. They just don't care. Like, just like the first article says, they don't give a F. And I'll leave it at that. Like, they literally don't care. And, they're just trying to figure out what way they want to go and They just know it's not someplace traditional. And if it's someplace traditional, they're fine with that. But they just don't want to be thrown in a box and defined by bank accounts and titles and corporate jobs and, you know, corporate wear and all these other things that seem to make you an adult in our society. So I think it's interesting. I definitely think that everybody is just kind of over it for the most part. I mean, they just are not over life, but just tired with it. And it may even just go back to like a work consideration, which is that, particularly here in the US, we work really, really, really hard. I mean, we work much harder per week, per day than most other people in any other countries. We don't take vacations like we should. We don't take our time off like we should. We leave tons and tons of time on the books every year. Like there's always surveys that say how much time, PTO time, vacation, personal gets left on the books every year for US workers. I mean, we show up to work sick. I worked in HR, so I know. And not to like throw shade, but like I did it myself for many, many years. I drank the Kool-Aid and I was that person who knew I was like basically almost on my deathbed, God forbid, but really, really sick and still showing up to work to somehow prove to my boss that, I was a team player and that, I was reliable and all these things that really shouldn't come into question when somebody's legitimately sick, right? So, like, that's the kind of adulthood, excuse my French, shit that we all have to deal with that gets very tiresome. Like when you don't like your job, when you don't like where you're working, and obviously the answer to that is, oh, well, you don't like it, then change your job. But like, it's not really that simple. Depends on what you do, where you do it, the availability of jobs, so many different factors. So when people say that to someone, you're like being a little condescending and unrealistic. And, and bills have to be paid and mortgages and rents and kids have to be fed. And, this is not me being pessimistic. This is like real life. And, like some people are figuring out all of that and dealing with all of that and then considering this whole new realization that I spoke about before, which is that, maybe there's something else I could be doing that would make me happy. Maybe I have some other purpose in this world other than going to this job I hate every day and dealing with people I can't stand more than 40 hours a week and just loathing every moment of it. And so that I would imagine is taxing on the brain. And I can't even say imagine, I actually know it's taxing on the brain. I've been in that position where I've hated where I was and just knew I needed to bide my time before I jumped ship. But at the same time, kind of figuring out, well, like, what can I do for myself and how can I do this differently? And it's just exhausting. It's exhausting. I mean, I think we take for granted just how much our bodies are capable of enduring, day in and day out. How much stress, how much wear and tear on the brain and the body. I mean, it really does take a toll after a while. So I don't think I'm ever shocked when I'm seeing on my feeds that people are just throwing their hands up and they're just like, yeah, I'm just not wanting to do the adult thing today because it's just too much. And maybe it's okay. I think sometimes things have to be dealt with and you've just got to like suck it up and do that. It's the adult thing to do. But I think, sometimes maybe the action is not as important. Maybe sometimes you just need to step back and look at the situation holistically. And maybe you just need to go off and get a blow pop and have that. Maybe you need to go have some fun. Maybe you need to get a ring pop and just feel like a kid for a moment. Maybe you need to pull out your kid's Nintendo DS and play Super Mario Brothers. Like for me, sometimes it's just, hey kids, I'm going to turn on the music and like we just go in my living room, or we're here and we're just dancing. It's just like a dance party. Like sometimes that's what I need to get through my day. Um, sometimes it's just fighting with my kids, like play fighting or doing cartwheels, just being silly. Like sometimes you just need to do that. And I kind of am glad that I have that spirit and that I watched other adults in my life also have that spirit, because I do think part of it is learned. So I think if you grow up in an environment where it was never fostered for you to be a child in the first place, I think it's a little bit difficult to hold on to that spirit because you never really had it. But I think when you grow up, and I was very fortunate to grow up in a household with parents who, might I add, to this day are very childlike in nature. I mean, even at 58 and almost 56 respectively, they are pretty youthful. And I watch that, and they're still that way with their grandkids, and they're still that way with me and my brother. And so I think, and even my grandparents, like, they had a youthfulness. So I think that stuff resonated with me. And so I'm that way with my kids. It doesn't mean my kids railroad me or that kind of stuff, but it just means like, I know when to get down and have fun with them, and I'm fine to have fun on my own. And sometimes my kids think I'm a little crazy because, I can be silly at times. And my husband's silly too. I don't know if he's still on, but it helps. It helps to diffuse a situation when life begins to feel really heavy, or when adulthood begins to just feel like a burden or a lot. So I think the moral of the story is we need to redefine how we look at adulthood, and what our definition is for what makes you an adult. And I think I'm comfortable saying that maybe adulthood isn't even a thing. Like maybe we're just all kids and we're continually just growing and growing and learning. Some of us are learning more than others, but that's okay. We're just kids and we're just learning. We're all just kids. And I think if we look at it that way, it's just a much nicer way or outlook on life, rather than we're just always getting older and older and older. And then we hit this point and we're back at kids. Some part of that thinking just doesn't make sense. But I think we're all just growing and learning all the time. And the more that we admit that we don't know it all and we don't have it all figured out, I think we lift the burden off ourselves of having to constantly be on as this well put together adult, because none of us really are, let's be honest. So I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing I want to leave you with is have fun. I mean, if you're not doing enough things to have fun, or if you're not doing enough things to let your hair down, or to give yourself a mental and physical break, you're going to break down. You just are. So, like if you're just kind of going at this adulthood stuff, like at 150 miles per hour, it may be time for you to rethink that and think about how you become more like your childhood self. And I don't mean you need to go get a ring pop if that's not your thing. But if it is your thing, go get the ring pop. If it is your thing to dance, find time in the day to dance and just do that. If it's your thing to rollerblade, like I love to rollerblade, do that. Find, like, kind of recover and rekindle those passions you once had and keep them fresh, because those things are the things that keep you youthful and young and sprightly, and it kind of sets off a little bit of an all spark in you of happiness. I believe, like I think at the crux of everything, everybody's just trying to be happy. And for some people it's harder, and for other people it comes really easy. But if it comes really hard for you to be that, then you need to find the ways to kind of incite that. And so, whatever that is for you, try to get back to that. And maybe then I won't see so much of you people talking about not wanting to adult. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it'd be nice to just see all of us just feel a little bit better about our days and take the time to just be light and funny and not have to shoulder all of that responsibility all the time. I think, you know what, before I go, I'll just say this. I think this is one of the reasons I love Snapchat. So I know there's like a whole delegation that's like, oh, Snapchat's for teenagers. It's crazy. It's stupid. I don't even know why people are on it. And then, obviously there's Snapchat for branding and for your business, and we can talk about all of that, but that's separate day, separate time. I think part of the allure with Snapchat and why so many adults have gravitated there is because it's that, again, it gets to the crux of that feeling, that happiness, that euphoria. It allows you to be something and someone or that person that is just uninhibited. There's just something about Snapchat that allows people to be themselves. Like, there are people on Snapchat I've known for forever, from blogging, from business, or whatever. And even though I've known them and known their personas elsewhere on social media, I see them. Like, I see them on Snapchat, really see them. And it's refreshing. And all the filters and the crazy filters and the stuff you can do with your face and the bitmojis, that they've just implemented, like, that are like these little cartoonish character manifestations of you. All of this it's child's play. It's basically child's play, and it's fun. And so, we all spend a decent amount of time, yes, branding ourselves and branding our businesses and trying to sell something, some of us, but I think we do just as much to laugh, to just simply laugh and to share the goofiness and, the hilarity of some of our lives and that kind of thing. I think it's just fun. And that's what it's become for me. And that's, like, not to even talk about this whole rivalry thing between Instagram and Snap, but I feel like this is what Snap has captured that I'm not quite certain IG is captured in that way. But we all, to that point, and I got off a little off topic, but to this point and what I'm talking about in terms of capturing that spirit, like, people are looking for that outlet. They're looking for that outlet in those things where they can just let their hair down, be themselves, and not have to always be buttoned up. And, that just happens to be one of the platforms that for me, I found people have been able to do that and really capture that spirit. So again, adulthood I'm not with it. It is what it is, but I think we're all just growing up and we're all just trying to cope. And hopefully, this discussion was helpful. And hopefully, if you were having a really bad week or a really crappy week and you just needed the reassurance that it's okay to throw your hands up and wave your white flag and say, I don't want to deal with this crap, that it's okay to be that way. And it's okay to find an outlet. And obviously, yes, you'll have to deal with that issue at some point, but it's okay to step back and breathe and do something, diffuse the situation and do something very childlike to get your mind off of it and just be happy for a moment, because that's all we're all after, is happiness at the end of the day. So that's pretty much all I've got. I will share this, and I will be sharing it every week until it happens. So next month is my 5-year blog anniversary. And I'm super excited about it. And I feel like a lot of people gave me a chance, and a lot of people supported me through years and gave me great advice. And I want to do the same now. So on September 13th, which is actually the physical date of my anniversary, I'm actually hosting a call. a free power call that will allow me to help aspiring bloggers, aspiring business owners, even current bloggers that have lost their way. I know a ton of people that I see all the time that, have blogs, but they just can't gain the momentum again. I'm holding a call to basically answer the questions, the secret sauce questions of how I built what I built with my blog, The Aristocracy of HR. So 5 years in blogging for me is a really long time, in the sense that I've seen a lot of bloggers come and go. There's a lot of people that were there when I started that I looked up to that don't even blog anymore, that don't even have a platform anymore. So for me to make it to this point is, for me, a big deal. And my hope is that people will sign up so that I can help them through my story, through what I've been able to do, to be successful as bloggers too. And this is really not just open to HR bloggers because that's how I started out. It's open to HR bloggers if you're a fashion blogger, if you're a beauty blogger, if you're a lifestyle blogger, if you're just a practitioner and aspiring to write, you should be on this call, because I'm going to tell you how I did it. There's like no frills here. Like, I'm not the girl that's going to say, hey, hop on my call, and then give you like these really half-ass answers. So it's happening on Tuesday, September 13th at 8 p.m. And if you're interested, or if you know somebody that can benefit from it, I really would appreciate if you can share it. They can register at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/blog your heart out. Again, that's bit.ly/blog your heart out. It will be on the blog in the coming week, so you'll be able to also do it then. And I will remind you again, because I'm like on my marketing stuff for this, and I really do want to help people. So I will be talking about it a lot. But now you know, that's just one of a few things that'll be happening next month, and I'm really excited to celebrate, and I'm hoping that I can help a few people get started and usher in a new delegation of great bloggers. So that's a little bit about new initiatives. And then as far as what's on the blog, I have a new blog article out, and it's the 3 reasons why failure feels so permanent. And it's really resonating with a lot of people. It's something that I've wanted to write for a long time, but I wasn't, unfortunately, in the place to write it mentally. But I've finally gotten there, and I think come up with some good, compelling reasons why it feels so permanent, and also how we can start to reframe failure. So you can find that at thearistocracyofhr.com. I'd love to hear your story, so feel free to share it in my comments on the blog. And guys, that's all I got. I am suddenly nasal. Suddenly nasal, and I need to go. But it's been rad. Thank you, Brian Moran. Thank you, NBC and Court, for joining. And thank you to my replay viewers. You guys are awesome. Like, even if you're not on live, you guys really, really are supporting on the replays. And I super, super see it. And I appreciate it on so many levels. So thank you, thank you. And I'm not sure. I think I'll be back next week for Hot Topics. But after that, I'm going to take about a 1.5 week break. Just because, one, Labor Day is coming and my kids go back to school. I have 2 kids going back to school. So yeah, mama's got to readjust. So I think I'm going to take a bit of a break after next week, after Hot Topics. And then we'll get it kicking in September. All right. So check out my offering. Check out the blog. You guys have a great rest of the week. Happy Friday Eve, and have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.